Well, good morning. Thank you so much for having me, for having this conversation. It's wonderful to see all of these faces in this room for this discussion, and I really appreciate your energy around this. I also want to thank my 8-year-old daughter, who's been so patient with me, is tagging along with me today, again. This discussion about school discipline, and particularly racial equity in school discipline, has been vitally important, and it has been important to philanthropy. And Bernie noted, my name is Allison Brown, and I work with the Open Society Foundations. And there are a lot of philanthropy dollars now in education equity and school discipline. And so I want to talk to you about how I think philanthropy can be partnering with you, with teachers. And I want to also share a little bit about how I think we can best work together to chart a path forward. As Bernie also mentioned, I used to work at the Department of Justice in the Civil Rights Division as a trial attorney there. And we would investigate often cases relating to school discipline. Janelle mentioned the joint guidance that the Department of Justice issued last year with the Department of Education Office for Civil Rights on school discipline that clearly set forth obligations, school districts' obligations under federal law relating to school discipline. It also, though, wanted to, I think, highlight what schools are doing well to reduce disruption and misconduct, to support and reinforce positive behavior and interventions, and help students succeed. So it's a wonderful resource. It really does provide some wonderful recommendations. When I was working at DOJ, we were investigating several school districts, and one of those school districts was in Mississippi. And there was a literal pipeline to prison there for students who were arrested out of school, black students. 100% of the students that were arrested out of school were black students in this district. And students were arrested for dress code violations, for talking back to teachers, for things that adults could not have been arrested for in the streets. And I interviewed one grandmother who was talking to me about her 14-year-old grandson, black male student who had Asperger's syndrome. And he was constantly picked on at school. And she'd been talking to the administrators and the teachers there to try to get him the attention that he needed so that he could avoid the bullying and harassment that he was experiencing. And she was having trouble making any headway. And her grandson showed up to school one day, and there was one of his teachers was not in the classroom. And the school had not provided a sub, and so the kids were kind of on their own. One of the teachers from another class was dipping in and out to check on them. But one of the children that had been bullying him the most took his book bag and threw it on the floor, and this was kind of the last straw for her grandson. And he retaliated by hitting this child, and they got into a fight. No injuries, no one was hurt, and eventually the teacher that was dipping back and forth came and broke them up and called the police, and the police came and arrested both students. And she said, the grandmother that was talking to me said that the most heartbreaking part of that story for her was the arrest, but also her grandson's reaction. And he felt now excited that he belonged to the group, that he had been seeing his peers, other black male students, other black students that had been, and the kids called it the walk of shame. They had been escorted from school in handcuffs and shackles. And every day there were numbers of students that were arrested out of school, and he felt like he now belonged to that crowd. And that for her was the most heartbreaking part of that story. And so the attention to school discipline that you see from the federal government, from philanthropy, are because of stories like that. Because of stories like what we heard about Tiana and others, we really have to try to fix holistically the variety of systems that are impacting our children and impacting on all of you. Another thing that has influenced the attention really is the data. And Janelle mentioned the civil rights data collection out of the Department of Education Office for Civil Rights. And one of the most striking parts of that data collection is the attention now to preschool. And I know that the Office for Civil Rights had been pressured, and this is why advocacy is important. They had been pressured by advocates to include data about preschool students, 3 and 4-year-old children. And initially, OCR was resistant to inclusion of 3 and 4-year-old data about preschoolers, because they didn't think that they would see any disparities there. They didn't think that there were really issues there. But because of mounting pressure from many advocates to include data about preschoolers, they did so in the most recent version of the data collection, which is for the 2011-2012 school year. And in that data collection, what they found was that 7,000 3 and 4-year-old children had been suspended out of school in the 11-12 school year. Black children are 18% of preschool enrollment and 48% of students that were suspended out of school more than one time. In comparison, white students represent 43% of preschool enrollment, but 26% of preschool children suspended once, and 82% of preschool children suspended multiple times. Boys are 54% of preschool enrollment and are disproportionately suspended as well. Another striking part of that data was about the arrests and referrals to law enforcement. So while, again, black students are 16% of student enrollment, they are 27% of students that are referred to law enforcement and 31% of students subjected to a school-related arrest. In comparison, white students are 51% of enrollment, 41% of students referred to law enforcement, and 39% of students actually arrested. And then students with disabilities. Even though they are only 12% of the overall student population, they are a quarter of students arrested and referred to law enforcement. So it's the stories, it's the qualitative data, but it's also that quantitative data that have really galvanized the federal government and philanthropy to pay attention to school discipline. But partnership is crucial, and at Open Society, we really have been strategizing about the best ways to be working with you all, with teachers, to really affect change and really impact what's happening in the classroom for all of our children and for all of you. And there are a variety of different ways, and I just want to talk through just a few of those ways that strategies that we've been talking about. The first is outreach. And we are in the process of planning a teacher summit for this summer, where we'll talk about the guidance and what it means for you all, what impacts it will have and can have on the classroom. But mostly we want to hear from you. We know, as Janelle indicated, that you face significant challenges in federal obligations, state level obligations, local obligations, paperwork, and other things. And we want to know about those challenges so that we can help you to navigate them. And we really are open to ideas from you all, and we really want to be operating jointly with you. The second piece is teacher training, so professional development for existing teachers, but also curricula and training for teachers that are in school, teachers in training, new teachers, teacher training programs. That is a top priority for foundations as we think about how we can really get this message to the folks that are entering the system, entering education. And then the third is holistic strategies. So there is a lot of focus on schools, on teachers, on administrators, but there are so many other systems that are impacted and that impact on children and families. And we have to be mindful of ways that we can do that. When I was at the Department of Justice, one of the consent decrees that we put in place in Pennsylvania actually brought to the table not just the school district, but Child and Family Services, the mayor's office, the police department, so that they could have coordinated conversations about what would work best for discipline strategies in that school district. And then another thing is we have to think very carefully, I think, about police in schools. We hear from advocates that police in the schools won't work. We have to get police out of schools, and that's an important thread of advocacy. But police are there, and so we have to be mindful of that, and we have to be thinking about ways that you all are working collaboratively with police. Through the memorandum of understanding that your school districts have with police departments, but also in the ways that you interact with them every single day, and understanding that police should not be involved in discipline decisions. For children to be arrested for a dress code violation shouldn't be happening at all. And understanding that police have a role to play and they can be community liaison, they can be helpful partners to you, but they really should be arresting only for criminal violations, things for which adults could be arrested in the streets. And then, we'll hear about alternatives to exclusionary discipline and particularly restorative justice from Tala in just a minute. But really wanting to work very closely with all of you to understand what some of the alternatives to exclusionary school discipline are. So we all know about PBIS and response to intervention. We've heard about restorative practices and peer mediation. There are other things. My teaching partner is coming out of Virginia and is one strategy for really kind of supporting and coaching teachers and doing really close examination of interactions between students and teachers. And understand, for teachers to actually observe themselves interacting with teachers and to get coaching and support in dealing with that. And there are things that you all are doing every day that can be incorporated in the fabric of alternatives that we think about every single day to exclusionary discipline. And then finally, and Janelle touched on this, it's crucial, I think, for you all to be, you're on the front lines. You are in the classrooms every day, and you can be identifying those entry points for systemic racism. So where in the system, where is the system broken that really allows for perpetuation of racial disparity? So in school discipline, it might reside in school discipline, it might reside in special education referral, in referral to gifted and advanced course programming. Disparities, again, in subjective categories of offense, and it's important to have a close examination of codes of conduct and policies. Another story out of that same case in Mississippi, a fifth grade student was talking to us, and we were interviewing him and his brother about their experiences in their elementary school. And they were saying, how frustrating it was for them to go to school because they had to have their shirts perfectly tucked in and their shoes and socks perfectly aligned. And they would see the white students walking in their flip-flops and their shirts untucked and their cell phones out and not experiencing any kind of disciplinary action. And they had observed that happening. And it was frustrating, it was dehumanizing. And it's those kinds of things that we want to make sure we're identifying, those systemic perpetuation of racial disparity, of racial stereotype, of implicit bias. And we're wanting to work with you all to do that because I think that that's a critical partnership. So I want to just close with talking about what has worked. So what we know is that jurisdictions that have successfully reduced their suspensions and expulsions have done so with when they have knowledge of affordable alternatives for assuring school safety and student achievement among leaders, when there is widespread awareness of the harmful effects of high rates of punitive discipline among key constituencies, including parents, including students, and including teachers. When there is sustained pressure for change from local constituents, when advocacy groups are really pushing on the systems and pushing back against the disparities that they see. And in some cases where there have been civil rights investigations by the federal government that actually has impacted on discipline disparity as well. So I will stop there, and I very much look forward to the discussion. Thank you.